Welcome to the 34th Annual Servant of Justice Awards Dinner. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Last year on the stage, I told you a little bit about my story and how I came to this work, inspired by my mother, who worked long hours to provide for her family. In the years since, I've been humbled by the opportunity to get to know so many of our clients and hear their stories. That includes Magnolia Alvarez Velasquez, who we are celebrating tonight with the Partnership Award. Like my mom, Magnolia is an immigrant. She works long hours to support her family too. Magnolia starts her workdays in the wee hours of the morning, preparing tamales to sell in our neighborhood. There should be a whole separate award for her salsa, by the way. As I conclude my first year as executive director of this more than 90-year-old organization, I'm proud that we get to share some of what we accomplished and the stories of some of the people that we met along the way with you all tonight. I'm particularly proud of the more than 100 people who work long hours alongside our clients in the fight for justice, my wonderful legal aid colleagues. Please stand. All right, not all of them stood, but anyway. I've seen firsthand their dedication to our clients, their legal acumen, and their commitment to justice. It is a genuine honor to work alongside them, even if some of them have terrible taste in reality television. Last year on the stage, I also said that Legal Aid isn't just an organization. It's a promise, a commitment from a city's legal community, from the people in this room, really, to our neighbors, that when they face a life-changing legal crisis, they don't have to do it alone. I'm proud that at Legal Aid, over the last 12 months, we have done our part to keep that promise. We made sure Robert McCord didn't have to face the legal system alone. Robert came to Legal Aid after he was sued by his landlord for eviction. The landlord alleged that he owed more than $20,000 in unpaid rent, a shocking amount considering that he had a subsidy that was supposed to cover that rent. After a months-long investigation, housing attorney Brian Rohal discovered that DC had been paying the subsidy to a different landlord for an apartment where Robert had never lived. Thanks to Brian's advocacy, the DC Department of Human Services took responsibility for the mistake, corrected the voucher issue, and Robert's landlord ultimately dismissed that case. Robert now lives in a safe apartment without the threat of eviction hanging over him. And it's not just Robert. In 2023, at Legal Aid, we accepted more than approximately 1,300 cases for full representation. That was a 16% increase from the year before. But we aren't satisfied with just 16%. In the first 3 months of 2024, we have accepted 76% more cases than the same time period a year before. We made sure Jenna Harris wouldn't have to face the legal system alone. Jenna walked into our Northwest office after she was sued by the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. The agency alleged that she operated an illegal nail salon out of her home and sought up to $10,000 in fines from her. It was immediately clear that the complaint was based almost entirely upon false allegations by a disgruntled former employer. Armed with advice from legal aid attorneys Tom Papson and Megan Ocean, Jenna cross-examined the key government witness, an investigator, and extracted a concession that he had never even gone to her home. She proved that she did nothing wrong. The judge ultimately ruled in her favor, and Jenna can now continue her freelance work without these fines hanging over her. But it's not just Jenna. In 2023, we worked to make our services more accessible to our clients. And in doing so, we met with nearly 4,750 clients, a 22% increase from the year before. But we aren't satisfied with just 22%. We continue to make our services more accessible to our clients, and in doing so, we have seen a 54% increase in clients in the first 3 months of this year compared to that time last year. We've also used the legal system to vindicate the rights of our clients. About a month before our clients were to see an increase in nutritional assistance benefits, thanks to nearly $40 million that the council had appropriated specifically for that purpose, the mayor's office announced that it would not implement the law as written. We got to work alongside our pro bono partners at Zuckerman Spader, including David Reiser, Ivano Ventresca, and Steve Herman, and our wonderful clients, Katina Cheadle and Maria Alexis Jackson. We drafted a complaint and a motion for preliminary injunction in a matter of weeks. We explained in that injunction motion how our clients stretched at the end of each month to put food on the table. In response to our lawsuit, the mayor's office backed down and implemented the program, and our clients started receiving benefits in February. It should not take the threat of a lawsuit to get the government to honor its commitment to our most vulnerable neighbors. But when it does, legal aid will be there. Thanks to our work together, nearly 1 in 5 district residents have more food on the table at the end of every month this year. So many of you have joined us to make sure our neighbors wouldn't have to face the legal system alone. Last fall, we relaunched our Housing Right to Counsel project, which guarantees lawyers to a growing subset of tenants with subsidies who are facing eviction. We did that in partnership with 5 other legal service providers, nearly 24 law firms, the federal government, and the Office of Attorney General Brian Schwab. These are some of the most vulnerable tenants in the district. An eviction can mean loss of a subsidy and loss of an ability to live in the district at all. This time last year, the council also joined us to make sure that fewer of our neighbors would have to face the legal system alone. Under the leadership of Chairman Phil Mendelson, council members Brooke Pinto and Charles Allen, the council undid a nearly 60% cut to our budget that the mayor had proposed. Unfortunately, to keep our promise to our neighbors this year, the council will need to do even more. That's because in our budget that she released last week, the mayor has proposed a 67% cut to legal services funding for next year. It should not be an annual fight to get money to provide the most basic services to our neighbors. Nearly 1 in 3 of the people that you saw stand earlier, a third of my colleagues, are here because of this funding. It is critically important that we reverse this cut. And to do so, the council needs to hear from all of you. I know that many of you are probably already on your phones by this point in my remarks, so I ask that you take a second to scan the QR codes on the table in front of you. They are not menus for your entrees. Instead, and they're also behind me. And please send a note to your council members explaining that this funding is critically important and needs to be restored. It won't take more than a couple of seconds, and I promise you can do it right now while I'm talking. At Legal Aid, over the next year, we're going to keep doing our part to make sure that our neighbors don't have to face the legal system alone. We are going to help more clients in 2024 than in any previous year. We're going to make our services more accessible by opening new community clinics that will make sure that our neighbors can live in safe and healthy homes. And we're going to stand up to anybody who breaks the law and harms our clients, whether that's a landlord, a debt collector, or the government itself. Thank you all so much for being here and helping make that happen.
Please welcome Mark Scheinason, who will present the Klepper Prize for Volunteer Excellence.
Good evening. I'm not Lisa Klepper. I'm Mark Scheinason. I'm a healthcare partner at Alston and Bird. My longtime friends, Arlene and Marty Klepper, generously created the Klepper Prize in 2014. Marty, who served as president of Legal Aid's board, is a respected retired Skadden Arps project finance partner. The award recognizes attorneys who made significant volunteer contributions in their legal careers. This year's award goes to Nancy Anderson, a senior counsel at Holland and Knight. Nancy is an incredibly dedicated attorney who developed expertise in appeals when clients were denied Social Security benefits. From the first case she took nearly 8 years ago at Cooley, she has ensured that her clients, many of whom face difficult physical and mental health conditions, get a fair hearing. She has also recruited and mentored her colleagues in their own pro bono work. Nancy clearly exemplifies what it means to make justice real for legal aid's clients.
Social Security is an incredibly complicated and difficult program to establish your eligibility for. And we have a client population who struggles with physical and mental disabilities.
When we refer a case to Nancy, I genuinely feel a sense of relief and I feel excitement for the client. I know they're going to be in good hands. I know they're going to get a fair shot.
I think it's really important to help folks in the community who don't have as much experience with these types of systems and processes, and really important to make a difference in their lives and help them sort of work through some of the stuff that's really, really critical to them and just something they don't have the experience with working through on their own.
So Ms. Beetleman came to Legal Aid in 2021, and she had at the time learned that she had been denied once again by the Social Security Administration for her son's benefits.
People, by the time they've gotten to us, have reached the end of their rope. They're frustrated, they're angry, and they don't feel heard.
Ms. Beetleman's case was a difficult one. She had been working on it for a long time and really trying to get benefits for her son, who was struggling in school and struggling to even be in school during the day. She was struggling to work because she had to watch him at home during the day. And so she had been working through the process for many, many months and really just getting nowhere.
Her son at the time, as I recall, was diagnosed with ADHD, oppositional defiance disorder as well, was not meeting school benchmarks.
Children are eligible for SSI out of recognition that kids with disabilities need additional support and assistance if they are going to be able to thrive.
And Nancy was wonderful enough to accept that case and work with the Beetleman family to ensure that they had a fair shot at that hearing. And I'm so grateful that she did, because not only did she achieve a favorable decision in at that ALJ stage, but she also was able to ensure that back benefits were received.
When you're handling a benefits case, you are working with an individual or a family to help them get something that's incredibly tangible. At the end of the process, if you are successful, they will have money or help for food or medical assistance that lets them go to a doctor.
Now that Stephen and his mother have won their case, I think it's really exciting that he's been able to stay in school and work through some of his classroom work and not have to be at home most of the time.
Nancy is in the weeds, reading all the medical records, trying to figure out how to make a better case for her clients. She is willing to take the tough cases. She is willing to try to help people who other legal services or other organizations wouldn't help because their case is too hard.
My main takeaway from the experience was that we can make a really big difference for people just by stepping in and helping them through the process. I mean, some of it is as simple as making phone calls for them and getting some of their medical records for them from the doctor's office. And really just these small steps can make a really big difference for people.
When it comes to Social Security disability benefits cases, these are not headline grabbers, but these are about giving people the ability to live with dignity while they have a mental or physical disability. Nancy just has a sense of compassion, and she brings a level of competence to these incredibly difficult cases, and she does it over and over again. And I'm so grateful for that.
Nancy, will you please come up and accept the award? Nancy, I know you agreed to accept this award gratefully on the condition that you wouldn't have to speak at a dinner, which already has a long list of speakers. Let me just say again, congratulations and thank you for your valuable dedication to clients who otherwise cannot defend themselves. Each client has benefited enormously from your compassionate advocacy and great lawyering. Thank you.
Please welcome Nadira Clark, President of Legal Aid's Board of Trustees.
Okay. Well, hello. Congratulations, Nancy, and thank you for your service. And Vikram, this night is amazing, and what we've achieved is amazing. I'm proud to serve as the president of the Legal Aid Board because I think it represents some of the best of what us lawyers have to offer. It's about using our talents and resources to support our neighbors in the district who really need the help, as you have seen. Why many of us wanted to get into this profession in the first place is really why we're here. Speaking of resources, last year's dinner was a record setter at $1.78 million, and this year's dinner has raised an even greater record. This is amazing. It really is amazing, and it's thanks to all the efforts of so many people here, of all of you. So thank you so very much. I want to make a special thanks to the co-chairs of tonight's dinner, many of whom are former law clerks and colleagues of our honorees. A little bit about the top sponsors. We would like to acknowledge the top sponsors of the event, Kirkland and Skadden, who each contributed over $200,000. Amazing. And next year, we hope that there will be even more logos on this slide. So that's a challenge to all of you. Finally, we'd like to recognize the DC Council and the DC Bar Foundation, led by Executive Director Kira Jarrett, for their commitment through the Access to Justice Grants program. As Vikram said earlier, that program funds about 1/3 of legal aid staff, which is now over 100 strong. Well, it's fun and exciting to celebrate all of this money for Legal Aid DC, and that's because of what the money means, help for our neighbors who need it most. Tonight, we will bestow the Partnership Award on Magnolia Alvarez Velasquez. Magnolia is a Guatemalan immigrant and former legal aid client who not only bravely fought for herself and her family, but for the rights of her community.
Decidí venir a los Estados Unidos por motivo de la pobreza que tenemos en Guatemala.
It's very difficult, first of all, to leave your home country. Most people don't do that because they want to, it's because they have to.
Magnolia needed to leave Guatemala and come to the United States in order to provide for her family. So she made the extremely difficult decision to leave Guatemala and leave Kenya and Douglas behind in order to come to the United States to be able to provide for them.
Me sentí muy triste porque de haberlos a ellos dejado solos, me sentí destrozada. Ya no siento más tristeza dentro de mí porque ya están conmigo ellos.
Bueno, mi reencuentro con mi mamá fue maravilloso porque no la había visto desde que era bebé, tenía como 8 meses.
Pues gracias a Dios ya estoy reunido aquí con mis papás, con mi familia. Y ya estamos conviviendo juntos porque ya era un sueño que yo tenía de tener una familia y convivir juntos ya.
The statistics are really stark for immigrants who are unrepresented. It's very unlikely they'll be successful in obtaining immigration protection.
It's really difficult to navigate immigration removal proceedings, which Kenya was in, without the assistance of counsel. And so I represented Magnolia in seeking custody of her daughter Kenya, which is a requirement in order for Kenya to then apply for special immigrant juvenile status.
A green card is the path to stability. It allows someone to be able to remain here lawfully. It gives them the right to work, and it also allows them to pursue citizenship eventually.
As a result of working with Magnolia and her family, Kenya is no longer under threat of deportation, and both Kenya and Douglas are on the pathway to becoming legal permanent residents.
Me gustaría agarrar como una carrera de enfermera o doctora, no sé, algo así que me gusta.
Ya cuando tenga mi residencia estoy pensando de quizá algún día poderme meter al Army o al Air Force.
Magnolia and German, her husband, both run a tamale stand in Mount Pleasant.
Yo he tenido el puesto desde hace 14 años. He estado sirviendo, ¿verdad?, a la comunidad y trabajando.
Magnolia is currently going through the process of obtaining her official certification as a street vendor. She's been working really closely with the Vendors United, and they really boldly and courageously made the decision to advocate for changes that would make it a lot easier for not only themselves, but for their colleagues who are also street vendors in their community.
A través de la policía que nos trataban que éramos delincuentes. Entonces nosotros tuvimos que buscar una organización de vendedores unidos. Nos unimos todos los vendedores para poder llegar a pelear una batalla más, para que nos dieran la libertad de poder trabajar.
It's important, especially when you're doing legislative advocacy, to have people like Magnolia who really know what they need and want and are able to clearly communicate that to the council. And she's one of those strong voices and advocates for her community.
Magnolia and her family are really special. It is an honor to specifically work with them and to stand up in court and to fight for the rights that they deserve and fight for the right for their family to remain in this community, to remain in this country, and to continue to thrive.
Trabajar con Julia ha sido lo más lindo, lo más hermoso que yo he tenido, estar con ella. Me ha apoyado desde el momento que yo me sentía sola. Ahora ella está a mi lado, ayudándome, apoyándome en todo lo que yo necesite.
Magnolia's story, I think, is a really powerful demonstration of how the individual direct client services that we provide at Legal Aid have that direct client impact, but it also impacts the family, it impacts the neighborhood, it impacts the community.
Mis planes futuros es un día poder luchar y poder tener algún día un mi restaurante.
I hope that they're able to fulfill their dream of opening up a restaurant. The food that they serve from their stand deserves a brick and mortar establishment because it's that good. With their family unity, I think that anything is possible for them.
Well, I don't know how many of you wish that that's what the catering was here tonight, but I do. We'll make do. Please join me in welcoming Magnolia Alvarez Velasquez. She is here tonight with her husband, Germán, her children, Douglas and Kenya. Congratulations, Magnolia.
¿Puedo hablar? ¿Puedo hablar? Sí. Muy buenas noches a todos. Gracias por este honor. Estoy tan agradecida de poder compartir mi historia y la historia de mi familia con todos ustedes esta noche. Tuve que tomar tantas decisiones difíciles para proporcionar un futuro más brillante para mis hijos. Y dejarlos en Guatemala fue lo más difícil que tuve que hacer. Agradezco a Dios todos los días que ahora estamos todos juntos aquí. Estaba preparada para luchar, para mantener a Kenia y a Douglas aquí conmigo en DC. Y afortunadamente encontramos ayuda legal DC, Legal ID DC. Me siento muy bendecida de tener a Julia de abogada. Ella ha llegado a ser un ángel en nuestras vidas. Ella es un regalo para mí y mi familia. Muchas gracias por todo lo que han hecho por nosotros. No puedo agradecerles lo suficiente. Gracias a todos.
I'm just going to interpret what she said. Thank you for this honor. I am so grateful that I was able to share my story and the story of my family with you tonight. I had to make so many difficult decisions to provide a brighter future for my children, and living them in Guatemala was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I thank God every single day that we are all here together now. I was prepared to fight to keep Kenya and Douglas here with me in DC. And thankfully, we found Legal Aid DC. I feel so blessed to have Julia as a lawyer. She's a gift to me and my entire family. Thank you so very much for everything you've done for us. I cannot thank you enough. Muchas gracias.
Well, Magnolia, you are an inspiration.
Before we get to the main part of the proceedings here, which is our Servant of Justice Awards, I just wanted to say a couple of quick thank yous. One, to the amazing Legal Aid Board of Trustees. Thank you for your support and for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you all. I also wanted to thank my staff that put this together, the amazing development team at Legal Aid. Rob, Catherine, Kayla, and especially Madison. You guys are awesome. Thank you, guys. Finally, I have some breaking news to announce, which Nadira announced our record fundraising in the first half, but fortunately I've gotten a couple of more donations in the intervening time, and I'm proud to announce that thanks to the support of many of you and my former boss, Carl Racine, we have now raised a record $2 million from this dinner. All right, now to the good stuff. Please welcome, for our first Servant of Justice Award, is going to be presented by another former legal aider, Chin Lei. Come on up.
Thank you, Vikram. Tonight, I am very happy to introduce my friend and former colleague at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Debo Adegbile. Debo and I started together at LDF in the fall of 2001, shortly after 9/11 ushered in a new era for civil rights. Through immense challenges, hard times, and scores of late nights, some of which I can't talk about, I've had the privilege of seeing him grow as a lawyer, as a manager, and as a person. When I heard Debo was being honored tonight, I thought it's just so appropriate. He's humble in the sense that he doesn't go around searching for these kinds of awards, but he should be also rightfully proud to be honored today. I can't wait to see Debo take the stage and accept the award tonight, because I know that he will do it not only on his own behalf, but on behalf of the legions of colleagues he's worked with at LDF and in the Senate and at WilmerHale, and all of the individuals he's represented over the course of his career. And Debo, above all else, is a people person. He has made people around him better, but he has also made our nation better. I'm excited to see Debo this evening shine because I know he deserves it. Debo, I know I speak for many of our friends and colleagues tonight when I say that we are honored to show up for you the way that you have always shown up for us.
The purpose of the Servant of Justice Awards is to recognize people in our legal community who have contributed to the mission of legal aid and to the general advancement of our client community.
What do I admire about Debo? I guess the question is there anything about Debo that I don't admire?
Debo is a lawyer's lawyer. He's someone who has a mastery of substantive law that is rivaled by no one.
Working alongside Debo is confidence building, and it's sort of awe-inspiring.
I first met Debo when I was a newly minted baby lawyer at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund back in 2001. Debo was prancing around the hallways of the Legal Defense Fund like he was an old expert, but we actually started contemporaneously.
I wish I were as composed and could be as generous of spirit as Debo is.
He lives his values. He brings his values to work every day. He takes them home with him at night.
On a personal level, he's just always been an extremely supportive friend. He's been a wise counsel that you can bounce ideas off of. He's been someone that you can go watch the first show of Hamilton with.
One of Debo's pals growing up was a guy named Grover.
Debo,
Yes.
I don't think anybody is watching, so could you tell me real quietly what that letter is?
X.
Hmm?
X. Debo kind of got his feet wet in public service work very young, and what people may not know is he was for over a decade on Sesame Street.
That same light in his eyes that you could see on that clip from the 1970s is the same light that you see today.
What is it, Debo?
A.
Hey! Hey!
One of the things I learned from Debo was that there's no substitute for hard work. I think I instinctively knew that, but you don't know what hard work is until you've worked on a brief or a litigation with Debo Adegbile. When we went in for depositions in a Louisiana redistricting trial, you know, one of my enduring memories is not just the courtroom action, but actually driving around the state with Debo. Late nights, early mornings, just meeting real people who had run for office and couldn't actually win because things were gerrymandered against them.
Debo had the very difficult task of arguing the Shelby County decision. He understood the degree to which communities around the country were relying on this litigation and on his advocacy.
And it wasn't until Debo stood up that somebody actually made the argument for, again, why this law existed, what we'd learned on the ground since the VRA came into existence, and what it would cost us to get rid of it.
While that decision ultimately from the Supreme Court was devastating and gutted the Voting Rights Act, he has continued to lead the charge on doing everything we can to protect voting rights around the country.
The message that I hope Picking Dabo sends to the legal community and to young lawyers in particular is that you can really use the law in a variety of ways to advance the public interest, and particularly the rights of people of color, African Americans, and historically marginalized groups here in the United States.
I think Dabo has been a real pioneer in developing a coherent law practice and private practice in the civil rights area, helping companies be compliant and helping companies do the right thing. It's been really exciting to see him build this practice.
He tends to hold court with the younger generation. There were any number of outings that I've been on with him where you can see law students kind of holding on to every word he's saying.
I think what's special with Dabo is that he has always backed up his words with action. So whereas a lot of people have always talked about serving the public interest, not many people actually have made that sacrifice.
Dabo, I cannot to this day believe my great good fortune that we are colleagues and partners and friends. And thank you so much for becoming a part of my professional and personal life.
You've just been such a powerful role model of what a Black lawyer can be.
Thank you for everything you have done in this country. Thank you for fighting for the most vulnerable among us. I expect you to do that for decades more, even if you've won this very illustrious award.
Dabo, I say to you, brother, your Young Turks turned out all right because we worked hard, we followed your path, your example, and we've enjoyed the ride, and I hope you have as well.
It is my distinct honor to present the 2024 Servant of Justice Award to Dabo Adegbile. Dabo, this is something that I've wanted to do for the more than 2 decades we've known each other. I'm so honored to be able to do it in front of this huge audience.
Wow. That is something. It's such a wonderful and affecting tribute to be able to reject Chin like that just after March Madness has ended. Thank you for all you do, Legal Aid DC. We've heard today about some of that affecting work, and I just want to begin centering the conversation on why we're here. And we're here because you perform an extraordinary service to this great city and to our nation's capital. Thanks to all of my friends who said those kind things about me, to Chin, who was prepared even before this room of distinguished lawyers to perjure himself. It is only our shared love of Legal Aid DC that would bring him to such calumny, but I appreciate it nevertheless. I'm also, as I look at that video, and Damon, Chin, Vanita, and I, we all did start at the LDF within a month of each other. And Vanita's right. I didn't know much about the law, not too much about civil rights law. I had aspirations. I was prepared to toil and to get better at it. And with their help, I began to learn that they were an extraordinary group, and they had such energy, and you could see that each of them was going to do such important things that I named them the Young Turks, because I saw that they were the vanguard of the next set of leaders out there. And each one of them has gone on to prove that in many, many ways, a vanguard of next generation leaders. And so you're not quite as young as you used to be, but you're still my Turks, and I'm very proud of you. And you helped me to understand that sometimes to lead a people, you walk behind them. And walking behind Damon and Chin and Vanita is one of the great professional honors of my career. So thank you for all that you have done for the nation. Thanks also to Legal Aid DC, to Vikram, to Rob, to the staff in the trenches every day for what you do, showing up in the hard cases and showing up in unflinching ways. Thanks to my partners and friends at WilmerHale, Lauren Moore, David Ogden, Kim Parker, Seth, all of you who have showed up today and show up year after year for this great organization. I really appreciate your leadership, and the reason I'm at WilmerHale is because it's a firm that looks beyond the billable hour to consider what the rule of law means and what a lawyer's place in society can be. And each of you live that, and I appreciate you for it. Some of my friends from the U.S. Civil Rights Commission are here, some of my former public servant colleagues, and I appreciate you. Thanks for all you do. And last but certainly not least, those folks who took me in at the Senate Judiciary Committee with Senator Leahy, the staffers of Senator Leahy, who did so much, and Josh Hsu leading the charge, corralling all of them today. I'm not going to stay long, but I have to begin with an important reflection that this dinner has sort of restored to my dimming memory. That reflection is when I was preparing to argue one of those voting cases, but before it got to a penultimate court, it was before a very important court with a very exacting three-judge panel. It was a constitutional challenge to the Voting Rights Act. There was a lot of weight that was attendant on that case because it's about the nation, it's about the democracy itself. And so I had to sort of talk myself into how an Irish Nigerian son of immigrants from the Bronx, New York, who stands on a good day, maybe 5'7", was the person that should be at the podium to defend something that was so important to the nation. And I didn't really have a lot to work with. And so what I thought about is the one thing I know is that I know the record in that case better than almost anybody. And the only reason that was the case is because I had put in more hours than anybody working on the legislative effort to help build what we would be, what Congress would pass, President Bush would sign, and then what we were defending in those cases. So the one thing I had going to the podium was that I knew the record, and then I argued the case before David Tatel. And it was quite jarring and unsettling to so quickly come to understand that I didn't know the record better than everybody in the country, and that there was one very formidable person who I was looking up at who knew the record much better than I did. And so as I was trying to think about the legal argument and where I wanted to go, I was also just trying to figure out how he had digested 16,000 pages of a congressional record that took me years to understand, and yet he had captured it and understood it so much better. And so I left that day in a bit of a quandary, but also knowing that David Tatel would do justice in that case. And it's my view that the best opinion on the Voting Rights Act, the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act, is the opinion that was authored by David Tatel, not only because he got the result right, but it's a brilliant opinion, and I commend it to everybody. But I also left understanding that I wanted to be a better lawyer because I had been before an extraordinary jurist who showed me what it meant to pressure test both sides in an argument. And so I'm still working at it, Judge Tatel, but you helped push me along, and I thank you for your years of service. They have been extraordinary, and the country is better for it. Thank you. Finally, we're here to lift up the mission of an extraordinary organization, Legal Aid DC. It means so much to all of us. That's why we're here. We've heard some powerful testimonials today. And what we understand is that you are an organization that stands in the breach for those who may not have enough others to stand in the breach. You give people hope. You make lives tolerable and full. You replace despair with feelings of empowerment. And you stand boldly and bravely in cases where the advocacy is very hard and too often resources are very slim. We thank you and are inspired by that example. But I also must offer a personal testimonial about why it's so meaningful to me to be able to lift up the mission of this organization, about why Legal Aid DC is so important to me, a big law partner from New York, I guess. I may not be the most obvious person to be standing here. But what I will say to you is that thinking about the work of Legal Aid DC in areas such as housing and eviction, public benefits, family, law, and domestic violence, for me, evokes experiences that I had as a young man, when I could only hope to be a lawyer, but had no lawyers in the family and wondered if I could ever navigate the thicket of unstable housing, food insecurity, as well as the hardships of being proximate to domestic violence in the home. You stand with people that need you to stand with them. You stand with people who you recognize are strong, resilient, ambitious, and too often underestimated. But you do so because you can see beyond the moment, beyond the circumstances of your clients, to what is possible, what is just, and what is fair. That is inspirational. That is the finest traditions of our legal system, and we are better for it, and we thank you for it every day. I leave you with some words that I carry from some mentors, peers, and colleagues at the bar. Brian Stevenson reminds us that our legal degrees summon us to have the courage to be proximate to poverty and to see what we need to see and to know what we must know to have a deeper understanding about the conditions of our fellow brothers and sisters. My partner Seth Waxman explains that his pro bono and public service is informed by the concept of tikkun olam, repairing and improving the world. The late, great John Payton, former DC Corporation Counsel, my boss at LDF and former Director Counsel, said that he spent most of his life attempting to make this a better and more just society and to make a more just world. John said, it's been exhilarating. And so I say to the legal aid staff, those folks who stood to be acknowledged and those folks who didn't stand because you didn't want the Klieg lights on you, you just want to show up tomorrow and appear in court and call your clients and develop the record, I say to all of you, stay proximate to poverty and hardship in aid of greater understanding. Repair and improve the world and fight unflinchingly to make it more just every day, one order at a time, for all those people of DC who will never be voiceless on your watch. Thanks for what you commit yourself to, for what you do, and for all the reasons that you do it. I can tell you there are little kids who are watching you and preparing themselves to be you before too long. Thank you so very much, and please continue to support this extraordinary treasure of Washington, D.C.
Please welcome Kate Stetson, co-chair of tonight's dinner.
Hi, everybody. This is so exciting. I am so honored to stand up here and introduce my former boss, my current colleague, my friend, and present-day legal legend, Judge David Tatel. While Judge Tatel truly is someone who really does need no introduction, I'm just going to forge ahead and introduce him anyway. So, Judge Tatel's passion for civil rights and equal justice spans 6 decades. As a young associate at Sidley Austin in 1968, he served on the Chicago Riot Study Committee following the assassination of Dr. King. Soon after, he left the firm to lead the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and then the National Lawyers Committee, working to ensure that newly passed legislation like the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act were enforced. He helped organize the Legal Services Corporation, which has helped boost funding for legal services across the country and is celebrating its 50th anniversary this week here in DC. Then he led the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare under President Carter, revitalizing the school desegregation efforts. He continued that work in private practice when he joined then Hogan and Hartson, the firm that is now Hogan Lovells, founding the education practice, advancing desegregation in school districts in suburban St. Louis, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and other cities throughout the country, and maintaining an active and impactful pro bono practice. Then, in 1994, he was appointed to the DC Circuit, the seat previously occupied by another civil rights champion, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And he accomplished most of this after losing his eyesight at age 30. The DC Circuit is where I and so many of his former law clerks and readers had the honor of getting to know Judge Tatel. During our time with the judge in chambers and well beyond, we learned from him not only to be good lawyers, but the importance of being lawyers who do good. But I only have so much time up here, and what I'd most like to share with all of you is that behind that towering intellect and keen judicial sense is a man full of curiosity and joy. The judge has a genuine and true interest in the world around him and in the lives of the people who are close to him. He is, quite simply, a wonderful person, mentor, judge, lawyer, friend, and husband. Hi, Edie. There are many people here who have been changed for the better by virtue simply of knowing Judge Tatel, in addition to the hundreds of millions of people who are benefiting every day from the more equal, if still far from perfect, country he has helped shape. We are so grateful that we can be here to honor you tonight. It is beyond time.
Judge Tatel, we're giving you your flowers now because you deserve them, but you've deserved them all throughout, for every step of your career.
Judge Tatel had an important impact on the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. His gravitas, his intelligence, his writing.
He was a delight to argue in front of. He was incredibly prepared, very articulate, very courteous, and a bit mischievous.
There is nothing scarier than arguing in front of Judge Tatel because he will know your case and your record better than you do.
Every time I argued in the DC Circuit and was assigned to a panel that David Tatel was on, it was just drew a big smile on my face.
I mean, we had a lot of cases where you had to interpret precisely the language of, let's say, a statute. And so, I might be shuffling my papers, trying to find the language during oral argument to ask a lawyer a question about that language. And Judge Tatel would, just off the top of his head, be able to recite that language.
He forced people to confront the most difficult aspects of their argument, whether it was an argument that he ultimately favored or didn't favor, but in a way that essentially brought out the best in people.
Even in the cases that were excruciatingly boring, incredibly complicated, the judge was finding something unusual and fascinating and interesting to home in on and think about and get his mind around. And I loved seeing that again and again.
Judge Tatel's example of moral clarity just makes me think about the giants of the civil rights movement.
over 700 opinions over the course of 30 years really have helped sustain our constitutional democracy.
And then you look at the important work that he did at the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare as the head of their Office of Civil Rights at an important time when school districts across the nation are trying to implement the desegregation mandate of Brown versus Board of Education.
Even when he was in private practice at both Sidley and Hogan, an enormous part of his practice was doing civil rights work.
I think what stands out to me personally about Judge Stadl's story is this focus on doing the right thing and this focus on using the law to really address the issues that were faced by the communities that he was working in without a regard for whether it was necessarily the most politically popular or socially acceptable thing to do. I think there's a zealousy of advocacy that mirrors what we try to do at Legal Aid.
Yeah, so there are 149 former law clerks and readers who had this extraordinary privilege of beginning their careers with the judge. It's a tight-knit group, one, because that's the culture the judge creates. He is so sincerely dedicated to each of his clerks. I mean, really is a family.
You have given so many of us, all of us clerks, all of the Tatel Tots, such a great start to our careers.
We would all have lunch together and talk about everything. That's where the curiousness and the inquisitiveness really came through. We'd talk about cases, we'd share ideas about particular arguments, but we'd also talk about the news, politics, culture, everything.
His law clerks took on a lot of the responsibility for making sure that he was guiding him to the metro and to other places, and it meant you got all of this time to just chat with the judge.
As a clerk family, I think we are incredibly dedicated to Judge Tatel because I go back to how genuine he is. And during that year, it really becomes clear that he cares about you as not just a lawyer, but as a person and your family.
But I remember him calling me to offer me the clerkship. And this was just, even today, 20 years later, just the most amazing thing that happened to me. And I yelled, he's like, "I'm so excited!" And the judge, without missing a beat, yelled back, "I'm so excited too!" And it was just, for him to meet me where I was at was just the beginning of such an important relationship to me. And, I was yelling like I had won the lottery, and I really did.
So several, if not many, of my fellow former clerks, the Tatel Tots, are here tonight, and I'd like to invite you all to join me on stage. We're almost all assembled.
Okay. Let me take that. Get rid of that.
All right, I think we can fit on the stage. So Judge Tatel, just on behalf of all of us, you have changed so many lives and so many of our lives, and it is our great honor to present you with this award.
Just a hug for everybody. Thank you all. It's so sweet. Thank you. I love what you said. I've always loved the name of this award. Wouldn't it be wonderful if every judge was a servant of justice? Kate, thank you for those lovely, lovely words. And thank you to all of my other law clerks who are here tonight. The tide that binds judges, and their law clerks together is mighty strong indeed. Thanks also to the Servant of Justice Honoree Committee and to its chair, John Relman, one of Washington's finest and most dedicated lawyers. And to everyone in that amazing video, Damon, Robert, Seth, Kelsey, Tiffany, Vikram, and Kate again. I've already planned a screening for the grandchildren. And Debo, what a treat to share this evening with you. Your arguments in the Supreme Court in Northwest Austin and Shelby County were masterful. But the judicial die was cast against you, which is not how our courts are supposed to work. Now that I've retired, people have begun asking, you sat on the DC Circuit for 30 years. You heard thousands of cases. What was your favorite? They're always surprised when my answer isn't the big headline cases. They're even more surprised when I tell them that my favorite cases were the ones argued by public interest lawyers, civil rights lawyers, and especially legal aid lawyers. Why? Because thanks to those skilled and devoted lawyers, even though their clients were disadvantaged in many ways, they stood before my court on equal terms with powerful, well-represented corporations and government agencies, presenting their claims to a tribunal empowered to provide a complete remedy. On those days in my court, the rule of law was alive and well. But alas, that's not how it works for most poor people. Most poor people, indeed over 90%, have no access to the legal system at all. It's a bedrock American principle that we all enjoy the same rights, from the lofty, like the right to speak freely, to the more mundane, like the right to accurate Social Security and welfare payments. Rights are hollow promises if people can't access our legal system to vindicate those rights. How can we as a society insist that all people use the courts to resolve their disputes with each other and with their own government, yet deny some access to the very legal system we insist they use? The rule of law cannot survive if it works only for the wealthy, which is why events like this are so important. Every dollar we give to Legal Aid DC is a dollar for the rule of law. Attorney General Robert Kennedy said as much at the University of Chicago Law School. I was there as a very young first-year law student, and his words have inspired me ever since. Only when we have created, in fact, a system of equal justice for all, the Attorney General declared, will our profession have lived up to its responsibilities to make law not only the guardian, but the agent of freedom. I am truly honored to accept this award from Legal Aid DC. Thank you.